On a Tuesday morning in 2012, a 27-year-old Air Force sensor operator named Bryant watched a strike he participated in kill 3 people on a screen in front of him. He was sitting in a ground control station outside Las Vegas. The air outside was 94 degrees. The screen in front of him showed a feed from 7,000 feet above a compound in Afghanistan. The strike took 11 seconds from authorization to impact. When it was over, his squadron commander told him and his pilot to go home and get some rest. He drove home. He made dinner. He watched television. He went to bed. He did this for 6 years. When he left the Air Force in 2011, the military sent him a certificate. The certificate documented his service record. It included a specific number. The number was 1,626. That was the official count of people killed in operations he had participated in. The Air Force considered this an honorable record worth commemorating. Bryant considered it something else. He became one of the most vocal critics of drone warfare and American military history, not because the strikes were unauthorized or illegal, but because the psychological architecture of the work, the proximity without presence, the intimacy without consequence, the ability to watch someone die in high definition from a climate-controlled trailer in the Nevada desert produced a category of damage that no one in the military's leadership had anticipated or prepared for. This is the story of what it actually looks like: the most technologically advanced, most psychologically complex, and most morally contested form of warfare in human history. Every level, every number, every moment where the distance between the operator and the outcome turns out to be much smaller than the geography suggests. Level 1. The Trainee. 21 years old, $38,000 per year. You wanted to fly jets. The Air Force had other plans. You enlisted or commissioned because you wanted to fly, not drones, aircraft. The specific dream involved a cockpit, G-forces, the physical sensation of speed and altitude that every Top Gun movie promised was the apex of military aviation. You scored high enough on the ASVAB, high enough on the spatial reasoning tests, high enough on the psychological evaluations. You were selected for aviation. Then the Air Force looked at its manning requirements. The F-35 program has pilots. The drone program has a shortage so severe that the service is pulling candidates who qualified for manned aviation and rerouting them to RPA, remotely piloted aircraft. The future of air power, they call it. The growth trajectory, the most operationally relevant platform in the current fight. You did not choose this. This matters psychologically more than anyone in the assignment process acknowledges. The pilots who wanted to fly drones and the pilots who were assigned to fly drones are different populations with different starting orientations toward the work. The Air Force does not track this distinction carefully. It should. Training is at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. 14 weeks. You learn to operate the MQ-9 Reaper, 66 feet of wingspan, 950 horsepower turboprop engine, 27-hour endurance, a ceiling of 50,000 feet, capable of carrying Hellfire missiles and 500-pound GBU-12 laser-guided bombs. The Reaper costs $32 million per airframe. You will fly it from a ground control station the size of a shipping container, sitting in a chair that costs less than the office chair at a mid-tier consulting firm. The interface is 2 screens and a joystick and a throttle and a targeting system that your instructor describes as intuitive. It is intuitive. That's part of the problem that nobody mentions during training. The controls feel like a video game because they were designed by the same engineers who design interfaces for systems meant to be operated by human beings without years of haptic conditioning. The familiarity of the interface is a feature. It is also the thing that makes the psychological boundary between simulation and reality porous in ways that emerge later, when the simulation is real and the reality has consequences that the simulation never did. You complete training. You are assigned to a squadron. You are told you will be supporting operations in a geographic combatant command. The specific country is classified in the sense that it is officially classified and practically known because the news reports drone strikes in that country regularly. Your first operational shift starts at 6 a.m. You drive to the base from the apartment you share with two other junior operators outside Las Vegas. You badge in. You enter the GCS, Ground Control Station. The previous crew briefs you on the current track. You take the controls. You are now flying an aircraft over a country you have never visited, watching people who do not know they are being watched, in support of an operation whose details are provided to you on a need-to-know basis. The sun is coming up outside the GCS. Inside, the screens glow. You check the feed. You begin the watch. Level 2. The Sensor Operator, 24 years old, $48,000 a year. Your job is to watch, for hours, in detail, without looking away. The MQ-9 requires two operators, a pilot who flies the aircraft and the sensor operator who controls the targeting systems, the cameras, the signals collection equipment. You are the sensor operator. Your job is observation, sustained, detailed, uninterrupted observation of human beings going about their lives, some of whom are targets and some of whom are not targets. And your job is to know the difference with enough certainty to satisfy the rules of engagement and the lawyer who reviews every strike before authorization. The lawyer review is real. Every kinetic strike, every missile or bomb released from a U.S. drone requires legal review before execution. A judge advocate general officer evaluates the target package, the identification of the target, the assessment of collateral damage risk, the compliance with the laws of armed conflict. The lawyer signs off or doesn't. This is not ceremonial. Strikes have been called off at the last moment because the JAG assessment identified an unacceptable collateral damage probability. You understand this process. It doesn't resolve the moral complexity of your work. It provides a framework within which the complexity is managed, which is different from resolution and feels different, especially at 3 a.m. on your 7th consecutive hour of watching a compound through an infrared camera. The watch is the thing that accumulates, not the strikes, the watching. Most operational shifts don't involve kinetic action. They involve surveillance, pattern of life analysis, the military term for watching the same people, the same locations, the same routines over days and weeks, building a picture of normal behavior so that deviation from normal behavior becomes detectable. You watch people eat, sleep, pray, argue, play with children. You watch from 7,000 feet with a resolution that is, in certain atmospheric conditions, sufficient to read a newspaper. The people you watch don't know you're there. The ethical dimension of this, the total asymmetry of the observation, is something you think about in your first year and stop thinking about it explicitly in your second year because thinking about it doesn't change the work, and the work doesn't stop. Brandon Bryant described watching a dog trot across a courtyard on screen just before a strike. He thought about the dog afterward, not the people. He trained himself to process the people as targets and objectives. The dog was outside that framework. The dog stayed with him. You have your own version of the dog. You don't talk about it. Everybody has a version of the dog. Nobody talks about it. Level 3. The Mission Commander. 29 years old, $72,000 a year. You run the operation. The decision chain ends with you. Mission Commander. You coordinate multiple aircraft, multiple crews, the intelligence feeds coming from signals collection and human sources, the ground force requests coming from special operations units or conventional forces who need eyes overhead. You translate between the operational picture and the command authority that authorizes action. The decision to prosecute a strike does not rest with you alone. It rests with a chain that includes you, the JAG, the Combined Air Operations Center, and ultimately a commander whose authority level depends on the target category. High-value targets require elevated approval. Time-sensitive targets, targets of opportunity that require rapid action, have compressed chains that you need to navigate in real time. Real time means minutes, sometimes less. A vehicle that matches a pattern associated with a known IED emplacement team is on a road that intersects a route being used by a ground patrol in 14 minutes. You have a targeting solution, you have a crew ready, you are waiting for authorization from a command authority who is in a building in Qatar and is also managing 17 other active tracks simultaneously. The authorization comes with 4 minutes remaining. The strike executes. The vehicle stops. Post-strike assessment shows the vehicle contained 3 military-age males, one of whom matches a biometric profile in the targeting database. It also contained a passenger who did not match any profile. Pattern of life assessment had not shown a passenger in this vehicle before. The incident report is written. The JAG reviews it. The strike is assessed as legally compliant. The target was valid. Collateral damage assessment was conducted. Proportionality standards were met. The passenger is classified as an unintended casualty. The military term is precise, and the English carries weight that the military term is designed to manage. You write the report, you submit it, you start the next shift. This is the accumulation. Not guilt exactly. Weight, a specific, undifferentiated weight that arrives with each report and doesn't fully leave with the end of the shift. The psychologists at the squadron level have a term for it. The operators have a different term. The commanders have a term that describes the management of it rather than the experience of it. None of the terms are adequate. They're not supposed to be adequate. They're supposed to be usable. Adequate would require you to stop.
Level 4, the instructor pilot. 33 years old, $88,000 a year. You teach the next generation. You decide how much to tell them. You've been doing this for 11 years. You have more operational hours on the MQ-9 than almost anyone in the Air Force. Your service record is exceptional. You were selected to return to Holloman as an instructor. The question you face in the first week of your first instructor assignment is one that nobody in the training command has formally resolved. How much do you tell them? The official curriculum covers systems operation, rules of engagement, crew coordination, emergency procedures. It does not cover the specific psychological texture of sustained surveillance. It does not cover the experience of the dog. It does not cover what happens to your marriage in year 4 when the operational tempo means you're working nights and weekends and the thing you're doing at night and on weekends cannot be discussed with your spouse because it's classified and also because you don't want to discuss it with your spouse. You make a decision that you've watched other instructors make in different directions. You teach the curriculum. You add informally in the conversations after class, in the sidewalk moments between buildings, the things that prepared you for the reality and the things that didn't. You tell them that the work is real in ways that don't feel real at the beginning. You tell them to build something outside the squadron that belongs entirely to them. You tell them to talk to someone not because the Air Force requires it, because the ones who don't are the ones you see at the 5-year reunion looking like different people. The ones who needed to hear it will remember it. The ones who didn't think they needed to hear it will remember it later. Level 5, the program manager, 40 years old, $140,000 a year. You don't fly anymore. You build the doctrine that determines how everyone else flies. You've left the cockpit, the GCS, permanently. You're in an office now, at a desk, working on the question that the entire American military is trying to answer simultaneously. What does drone warfare look like in the next decade? The answer is changing faster than the doctrine can track. Ukraine has demonstrated in real time that the future of drone warfare is not the $32 million MQ-9. It's the $500 commercial quadcopter modified with a 40mm grenade. The proliferation of cheap, effective, autonomous or semi-autonomous systems has compressed the technological advantage that American military drone superiority represented for 20 years into something that can be replicated by a 19-year-old with a drone from a consumer electronics store and a 3D printed munition adapter. The MQ-9 that defined your career is being retired. The Air Force announced it in 2023. The platform that flew 400,000 combat hours that is the subject of this entire script that changed the conduct of American warfare for 2 decades is being phased out in favor of smaller, faster, more survivable systems designed for contested airspace against peer adversaries rather than counterterrorism operations in uncontested skies. You are writing the doctrine for what comes next. The autonomous weapons question sits at the center of everything. At what point does a system make targeting decisions without human review? And what does the chain of accountability look like when it does? The answer the military has given so far is meaningful human control. A human must be in the decision loop for lethal action. The answer the technology is producing is systems that can identify, track, and engage targets faster than any human review process can operate. The gap between the doctrine and the technology is where the next Brandon Bryant will come from, except the next version won't have a name in the record because the system won't need an operator. You write this in a memo, you send it up the chain, it comes back with comments, you revise, you send it again. The technology moves faster than the memo. Level 6, the general, 52 years old. You brief the Secretary of Defense. Every drone strike in 3 theaters runs through your command. You are the Combined Forces Air Component Commander for a Geographic Combatant Command. Every drone operation in your theater, every track, every strike, every ISR mission, every collection requirement, requires your authority or the authority of officers you've designated. You are responsible for the legal compliance, the operational effectiveness, and the strategic consequences of actions taken by operators sitting in trailers in Nevada and New Mexico
and a forward operating base in a country whose name appears in classified documents and occasionally in news reports that you read with the specific attention of someone who knows what the news report doesn't. You brief the Secretary of Defense quarterly. You brief the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. You testify before the Senate Armed Services Committee when requested, in sessions that are partially classified and partially public, answering questions from senators who range from deeply informed to performing concern for cameras. The question every senator asks in some form is the same question. How do you know you got the right person? Your answer is honest within the limits of what can be said publicly. You describe the process, pattern of life analysis, biometric confirmation, multiple source corroboration, JAG review, proportionality assessment. You describe the process accurately. The process is real and rigorous. The process is also imperfect. Every commander at your level knows the studies. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism documented 910 to 2,200 civilian casualties between U.S. drone strikes between 2004 and 2020. The U.S. government's own assessments released under FOIA requests show a gap between operator-assessed civilian casualties and independent assessments. The gap is not fabrication. It is the systematic difficulty of assessing casualties from altitude in real time with incomplete information under operational pressure. You know this. The senators asking the question know this. The difference between you and the senators is that you are responsible for the decisions that produce the gap, and they are responsible for authorizing the budget that funds them. You answer the questions. You return to your headquarters. Your J3 briefs you on current tracks. You make decisions. The screens glow in the operations center. Somewhere over a country that appears in classified documents, a 24-year-old sensor operator is on his fourth hour of a pattern of life track. He drove to work this morning past a Starbucks. He will drive past it again tonight on his way home. In between, he watched people live their lives from 7,000 feet and waited for instructions. Closing, the distance that isn't. Brandon Bryant left the Air Force in 2011. The certificate they gave him is in a box somewhere. He has said in interviews that he doesn't look at it. He has also said he doesn't need to look at it. The number is not something he forgets. 1626. Here's the thing about that number that doesn't appear in the coverage. Bryant participated in those operations as one member of a crew in a chain of command that stretched from his GCS to a JAG officer to a commander to a command authority to a policy framework authorized by the executive branch and funded by the legislative branch and supported by a public that largely doesn't think about what happens after the authorization. The number belongs to a system. Bryant was the face of the system that was closest to the screen. That proximity, the specific intimacy of watching through a camera that sees clearly, is what the architects of drone warfare didn't fully account for when they designed a platform optimized for everything except the psychological cost of the operator of being simultaneously present and absent, powerful and powerless, responsible and institutional. The next generation of systems is solving this problem by removing the operator entirely. Autonomous targeting, machine learning identification, human authorization at the policy level rather than the operational level. Whether this solves the problem or relocates it is the question nobody has answered yet. Somewhere in Nevada, a 21-year-old is finishing his first week of training. He wanted to fly jets. The Air Force needed drone operators. He is learning the interface. It feels intuitive. He will drive home past a Starbucks tonight. He will not yet know what he's carrying. He will find out. They always find out. The distance between the screen and the consequence is exactly 0. It just takes time to feel it.